I lived in a house that was built again in 1867, an old house my mom paid like $50,000 for. It's an old farmhouse. You'll never pay $50,000 for a house like that again. But we couldn't heat it in the winter because we couldn't afford oil, which we had an oil furnace. We couldn't afford the electricity to run heaters. And we certainly couldn't afford to eat something extravagant every single night. The Salvation Army was kind of our thing. We didn't have a whole lot of aspirations growing up. And again, thinking at any point that I could die, it was terrifying. So I tell the kids that this is what my past looked like. This is what things look like for me now, but this isn't the end of it for me. I'm going to keep going. And it's important for your generation to keep going even just a little bit further. And that's what I truly believe in for my kids as well, is that your kids are there to be a little bit better than you are.
Welcome to Beyond the Wheeze, the podcast where perseverance meets potential. I'm Josh Rayome, public speaker, marathon runner, asthma advocate, and your host as we explore the intersection of health, fitness, and resilience. Whether you're managing asthma, chasing a new personal best, or simply looking for inspiration, Beyond the Wheeze is here to show you that no challenge is too great to overcome. Together, we'll uncover stories, insights, and strategies to help you push beyond your limits. It's time to breathe deeply, move forward, and unlock your true potential, one step at a time.
Welcome back to Beyond the Wheeze, the podcast where we break barriers, challenge limits, and redefine what's possible for those living with asthma and respiratory conditions. I'm your host, Josh Rayome, and today we're doing things a little bit differently. Usually, I'm the one asking the questions, but this time I'm in the hot seat as my friend and running buddy, Joelle Lachance-Artindale, is stepping in as guest host to turn the tables and interview me. We'll dive into my journey with asthma, how I went from barely running 100 meters to completing marathons, my work as an advocate, my work speaking, and what keeps me pushing forward. If you're new here, Beyond the Wheeze is all about bridging the gap between asthma patients, caregivers, and the medical community. We bring in experts, innovators, and those with lived experience to share insights, offer practical advice, and drive real change in the way asthma is understood and managed. Joelle brings an incredible perspective to this conversation. She's a nursing professor and healthcare professional with expertise in curriculum development, Indigenous health, critical care, and leadership. I couldn't ask for a better person to take the reins on this episode. So with that being said, Joelle, thank you so much for joining in today.
Thanks for having me. I'm really looking forward to being able to kind of flip it over and ask you some awesome questions. We're talking about a bunch of things I love. So running and healthcare and mental health and wellness and advocacy work. I'm excited to hear more about your story and how it all began. So I look forward to starting the conversation.
So even though you're the one kind of interviewing me today, I feel like I could very well just be interviewing you as well, or at least on a separate episode. You do a lot of running yourself, and you've been on somewhat of a journey yourself too.
Yeah, I've been running since 2020, and not to take too much time, but I'll make it short and sweet. I always thought it would be cool to run a 5K. For some reason, it sounded cool to me. And I had tried the Couch to 5K app a few times and would get about a week in, 2 weeks in and give up. But in 2020, I was quite motivated. COVID was hitting us pretty hard. And I was also getting married. So I was on a little bit of a weight loss journey to fit into my dress. And then I started running. And in 2021, about 10 months after I started running, I ran my first half marathon. And I have literally been running for almost 5 years now.
That's crazy because I think the minimum that I see you run now on Strava or on Facebook is a 5K. It's crazy how you can go from, I really want to run a 5K to running them consistently. COVID was bad, obviously, but good things came out of it. On my end as well, that's when I got into running. Kind of like you, but a little bit too late. Maybe my wedding was a wake-up call. I was 278 pounds, and we'll talk about it a little bit during this interview as well. And that's what kind of kicked my butt into changing my life because I realized, well, I'm already married. I didn't want to look like this during my wedding. I do. And that's fine. But for me, I wasn't comfortable in my skin. So I had to make a change. And I knew that, well, what comes next in life after marriage? Kids. And I want to be able to keep up to my kids. And I want to try to get as good control of my breathing as I can as well. And we're going to talk about it a little bit during this interview too, that really being fit or being healthy or being active and lung function, they really go hand in hand. And I think that's important for people to know, because it's really easy to get deterred from running or any kind of physical exercise, whether it's something minimal or something more excessive, when you have breathing issues, because obviously you're stopping to take your inhaler. But we're going to talk about that today and how really it's a good thing.
Mm-hmm. For me, I found too, during COVID, I was an ICU nurse at the time, working in our ICU. Luckily, the side of the ICU I was working, we didn't see a lot of COVID patients at the time when it first began. But there was so much information out there that was false or it was misinformation. And I actually turned to podcasts for, seeking advice from medical experts. Yeah. And I found a physician that I used to work with, and I was actually on his podcast a while ago too. And he was talking about the biggest things that they were recommending during that beginning part, especially before the vaccines, was just trying to be in the best possible shape you could be, so that if you got COVID, you would survive it. And all I kept thinking was, I was quite heavy at the time as well, and I was not active. I was very minimal activity other than working 12-hour shifts and working a lot. I worked a lot. So my mental health and my physical health was not great. So that being said, we have a lot of great questions that talk about these things. So I'm really excited to be here. Looks like we're going to be talking about a few different subjects. So we'll start first thing, personal journey and asthma. You've talked a lot about asthma. I think that's how me and you actually connected, was I started following you on Instagram as the Asthma Runner. Such a cool name. But can you share your asthma journey and what led to you becoming, I guess, officially the Asthma Runner?
My weight loss journey started kind of before my running journey did. And I knew right away when I was getting into it that it would be really hard to stay motivated or to not get, again, deterred if I was completely out of breath every time I took a step, whether it's gone for a hike or zone 2 training or what have you. So I started losing weight originally. So I was 278 pounds, and I probably lost a good 30 pounds. And when I lost 30 pounds, I felt good about myself, but I had a bit of a wall to break down. And what that wall was being told my entire life that you shouldn't run. You have exercise-induced asthma. You shouldn't run. You shouldn't do this. You shouldn't do that. It's going to be taxing on your lungs, and really it can never be good. I was never told of the benefits really of lung conditioning. And then when I got into running, when I started running, well, I did 100 meters one day. It was my first day. And I stopped and I was dying. I was on the ground. I was taking my inhaler. I didn't know what was happening more, whether I was out of breath or if I was just, my asthma was bad. It was really hard to really differentiate between the two. Now it was both. The next day I returned. I ran, 200 meters. And then the next day, 300 meters. Something to that effect, until eventually, before I knew it, like you did, I was running 5Ks quite regularly as well. And really to do anything without taking my inhaler with me because I forgot it, I knew right away that something was happening. And that's when I then created the Asthma Runner on Instagram because, well, I was, 10-year-old, 12-year-old, 13-year-old Josh, believing that I would never be able to do these things, being told that I would never be able to do those things. And now I'm doing them. So I created that Instagram because the way I saw it, if I could enthuse somebody or motivate somebody with respiratory issues, with asthma in particular, to get out there and start exercising, to start working out, to start going for walks, for hikes, for runs, whatever have you, then really it can only lead to good things. So that's why I started it. Growing up, my asthma was never under control. Now, having said that, you do need to have somewhat control of your breathing first. Now, if I'm sitting here not doing anything and I have to take my inhaler multiple times, I probably don't have good control over my breathing. So first, really good to get that. That's really important, or else you are already automatically know you're going to be abusing your inhaler. But when you have good control of your asthma, or at least okay control of your asthma, I really think that's a good time to start. Now, as a kid, I didn't have that. I was in the hospital 3 to 4 months out of the year. It didn't matter if I was sitting on my couch, if I was out for a walk, or if I was sleeping. I would be having an asthma attack. If I wasn't in the hospital, I was at home struggling to breathe, probably should be in the hospital type thing. So as a kid, probably wouldn't have made sense for me. Having said that, it took me 30 years to realize that triggers that you have, how had I realized those triggers at a younger age as well, then maybe I could have gotten into exercising a bit younger. So again, make sure you have decent control of your lungs, good control of your lungs. You're on the right medication. And honestly, that's what I did. And that's what I'm here to advocate for, is the importance of exercise on asthmatic lungs, or just in general for respiratory health.
It's amazing just to hear you talk about it, because I think having, become a runner myself, I don't have to think about packing any meds with me, right? Like, and I think how, I'm grateful to think about that now. And I feel like that must be a challenge to always think about it, to be like, I need my inhaler, or I have to make sure that I pack it somewhere. And I know sometimes too, some of the running gear that is available for men doesn't have a lot of pockets, I feel. For women, we have more pockets on our shorts and stuff. So I'm like thinking about even where you put all these things, even for just a short run, because sometimes I love really short runs because I don't have to bring anything. It's very nice. So talking about that, you mentioned a few challenges, but what are some of the biggest challenges you faced that really impacted your running journey directly related to your asthma?
Yeah. So although not, certainly not the biggest challenge, you're right. Finding a place to put your inhaler, that is something you have to think about. For those who are watching this podcast, not just listening to it, Puff on Pace, which is a company, they just sent me this actually. So it's a wrist strap. You can put your inhaler in.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, which is really cool. You put your inhaler here and you don't even have to stop or take it out. You just put it up to your mouth, press it, and there you go. And, I've been running now for 3 years, and I just got this. So there's new things coming out all the time. I just thought I'd throw that out there.
Yeah, now, that's awesome.
The biggest challenge was really getting started, was not getting discouraged within those first few runs, because it was extremely discouraging. Now, I found for myself, I was so unhappy with the skin that I was in, that I was willing to push through that discouragement and hope for better results. And I'm glad I did. And you know what? I noticed those results within as little as 2 weeks. It was crazy. Now, physically, yeah, my lungs would burn. I need my inhaler rather frequently, but I created rules for myself, and I had really 2 rules, and they're kind of the same thing, but it's the way that I look at it. Is one, if I have to stop and take my inhaler, well, okay, I got to start thinking of something. I got to slow down a little bit, maybe. Now, my golden rule number 2, if I had to stop and take my inhaler again, well, today's not my day. I'm going to come back tomorrow. And I used that as a way to kind of bust down that barrier, to really overcome that challenge and push on. But that was really my biggest challenge, was staying motivated when I thought that it just was something that indeed I couldn't do. And yeah, I'm super glad that I held on.
Have you noticed throughout your running, and because you've ran very, short, and I don't want to say very shorter, because people that are starting running a 5K is a perfect distance, but shorter and longer, is there a part or a point throughout your running that you find you might need it more? Like beginning, middle, end? I'm just curious, to be honest.
I guess an argument could be made that near the end of the run, especially if you're running a marathon, that's 42.2 kilometers. Your heart rate's naturally going to be a little bit higher near the end of your run, especially if you're going for a negative split. Now, that in that case, I do find that my asthma would get worse at the second half of a run. But really, it's all about pace management. I'm a big advocate of zone 2 training. I think it's huge. And that's how I went from, running a 5-hour, 23-minute marathon to 7 months later running a 3-hour and 58-minute marathon with the flu, is zone 2 training, 2 speed days a week, of course, which is common in running. Now, those were the hard days. Those were the difficult days because my heart rate was 180, 190, even peaking at 200 at times. So really, it's about pace management, keeping your heart rate low. And it's important to have the proper devices when you go out. And I don't want to sit here and say that you absolutely need to buy yourself a watch, Garmin, whatever have you, Apple Watch, doesn't matter. But for somebody with asthma, especially when pace management is a thing, which I think for all asthmatics, it really should be, but you should keep an eye on that stuff, because that is make or break, and that will make a big difference.
Yeah, really keeping an eye on the things that you might look at as already starting to trigger, and you may not feel the symptoms right away. Because I feel like, I'm not asthmatic, but even just running in general can cause you to already feel a little shortness of breath. And then on top of that, having a condition that causes it. right? So watching those things, especially as a healthcare provider, I watch my heart rate closely too, and I don't have asthma, so I couldn't imagine. Sorry. Oh,
Yeah.
go ahead.
And kind of to add to that a little bit as well, if you are taking your inhaler, your beats per minute are naturally going to be a little bit elevated. So just make sure you're taking that for account as well.
So you've talked a few things already about how running has changed you, but what are the biggest impacts that it's had on your life, both physically and mentally?
Yeah. So physically, as I mentioned before, really it's being able to go anywhere and realize that I've forgotten my puffer. That's huge. Now, I was the kind of person that could go through an inhaler. When I was a kid, I mean, an inhaler a day was easy, and that's poor management. That's not good. Now, in my adult years, an inhaler a week is kind of closer to what I would go through. And now, other than my controller medications that I take, so I do still take a steroid puffer once a day, I don't really need to rely on my PRN or my emergency inhaler nearly as much, to the point where I do forget it. And if I need it, well, I have the time to get home to one if I really need to. Now, mentally, this is really where I notice huge benefits as well. It's really been an anchor for me. I've dealt with a lot of stress. COVID was tough. I had twins during COVID as well. My dog got famous on TikTok. I didn't. I mean, that's depressing. That's depressing when your dog and your kids are in People magazine. You're the one taking the photo and nobody knows your name. Just kidding. But to poke a little fun at it, but battling depression is huge. And people listening in, I don't know if you've ever heard of EMDR training. EMDR stands for eye movement desensitization and reprocessing therapy. And it's a psychotherapy technique. And I am reading the definition right now for people listening in. It's a psychotherapy technique used to treat trauma and PTSD, involving recalling traumatic memories while engaging in bilateral stimulation, like side-to-side eye movement. So naturally, running is a form of EMDR therapy. And I didn't know this until afterwards, but when there are weeks that I'm injured or times where I can't run because of a chest infection or something like that, I feel it. Do you know what I mean? Like the mental side of things, I feel it all coming back. So I've noticed that on the mental aspect side of things has been incredibly beneficial. And yeah, I'm so much more capable of doing things than I ever really believed I would be. Running has given me a sense of control over asthma in my life. It's kind of like maybe somebody who realizes that, well, when you eat healthy, when you're not just eating McDonald's every day, you feel great. Well, that's what running has been in my life. It makes me feel so much better inside and out.
Mm-hmm. And it really sounds like you're talking about, like, yes, it's cool to say you ran a marathon. Really cool to say that. But it's also so nice to say that you can do regular things in your life now without literally becoming winded, and being able to keep doing regular activities that you might have not been able to do before without needing to have that inhaler close by at all times.
Keeping up to my kids is such a big thing for me. Going camping and not worrying about taking my nebulizer with me, that's huge. It's the little things, and you notice them quick.
Yeah, absolutely. What do you think are some misconceptions that people have about asthma and exercise?
Yeah, so I think I have two. The biggest one is that people with asthma shouldn't exercise. I was one of those people, and I was one of those people because I was told for years that that's something I shouldn't do. Now, many assume that physical activity will only trigger symptoms, but in reality, even as somebody with exercise-induced asthma, when managed properly, it can improve lung function and overall health. Now, another misconception is that inhalers are a sign of weakness. And I don't feel that so much today. Of course, I don't feel that at all today because I advocate for it, right? So I'm proud to hold my puffer out. But when I was a kid, it was a lot different. I was that kid in the gym class who had an inhaler in my pocket, or had, to give my teacher that inhaler and have to use it all the time, or have to sit down and use it, go to the locker room because I was embarrassed to take it in front of people. That was challenging. So do not ever think that somebody with asthma has any sort of weakness. Asthma isn't a stop sign. It's just an obstacle that can be worked through. We just have one extra obstacle than you do.
Yeah, no, it's really interesting to hear. And I don't have any lived experience like that with dealing with asthma, but just trying to imagine, like, as a child, what that would feel like, just being in a classroom and being afraid to take something that could be life-saving, right?
And I've been in positions before too where I've collapsed. I've collapsed in gym class, and I've taken the ambulance out of there. And I can tell you right now that it is a lot less embarrassing to just take your inhaler out, to wear it proudly, than it is to collapse and wake up in a hospital knowing that you took in an ambulance there, and all your friends, all the students saw that. You would become the talk of the year, and that's happened to me. So don't be scared to pull out your inhaler.
No, that's a really good message. And I hope if there are kids that are listening that do have asthma, and I'm assuming that you probably get a chance to chat with some of them at some of your speaking opportunities to engage, and really like teaching them that it's okay, right?
Yeah, I'm fortunate in that. Not so much at the speaking engagements, because it's mostly professionals or other advocates, really, that are there. But I also do motivational speaking. So I go into schools and I speak with students. And now I know all the students I'm talking to, they don't have asthma. What is it? 1 in 6, whatever the number is. But I know that I'm helping those people with asthma against the people that might be sitting there thinking, oh, this person's dumb because they have an inhaler. Well, maybe if they can understand the other person's side of things, then they could understand it a little bit more, that again, it's not a sign of weakness. So that really does bring me great joy to know that I might be helping, again, those Joshes out there.
Yeah. And that they can one day run something, do something. It doesn't need to be running, right? It could be anything that they are dreaming about, that it's something they can achieve. I don't know if kids dream of marathons. I think that's just us.
Well, kids dream of, these days they dream of becoming famous, becoming viral. And I've been viral. I've got a blue check mark. I've got all that stuff. It's great, but it's not really what it's cracked up to be. But I do use that as kind of a topic during my speaking, that, hey, I came from poverty. I lived in a house that was built again in 1867, an old house my mom paid like $50,000 for. It's an old farmhouse. You'll never pay $50,000 for a house like that again. But we couldn't heat it in the winter because we couldn't afford oil, which we had an oil furnace. We couldn't afford the electricity to run heaters. And we certainly couldn't afford to eat something extravagant every single night. The Salvation Army was kind of our thing. Now, we didn't have a whole lot of aspirations growing up. Didn't really matter to our parents if we went to school or we didn't. It was just kind of something that we had to do. And again, thinking at any point that I could die, it was terrifying. So I tell the kids that this is what my past looked like, and this is what things look like now. And usually, that excites them. But what's really important is this is what things look like for me now, but this isn't the end of it for me. I'm going to keep going. And it's important for your generation to keep going even just a little bit further. And that's what I truly believe in for my kids as well, is that your kids are there to be a little bit better than you are.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't have kids, but I have nieces and nephews. And sometimes I even think about my students, of like, I'm trying to teach you guys the things I wish I would have known. Right.
Yeah. That's right.
And trying to push you to make sure that they have all the information that I would have wished to have had, when I was a brand new nurse. Yeah. But okay, let's talk about some training and some fitness. I am very excited to hear. This is actually something I've really wanted to ask you, is how did you train for a marathon while managing asthma? And I want to add in there about how you had become an Asthma Canada advocate.
Right.
What, 2 months before the marathon? Was it 2 months? Okay, I want to know about that. How you trained for a marathon in 2 months.
I wasn't ready for the marathon. I can tell you that, but it was such a good opportunity to advocate that I made myself ready. I kind of gave myself that David Goggins mentality. But training for marathons while managing asthma, really, it's about balance. So training consistently, but listening to your body at the same time, monitoring weather, air quality, your individual triggers as well. And what's big is, what's big for me is knowing the times of the year that I should probably stick to a treadmill. So I have allergic asthma. Pollen season is absolutely brutal for me. And like what we've had over the last couple of years, especially that Parry Sound fire, forest fires are absolutely horrible on my lungs. So during forest fire season, you're going to find me on a treadmill. And I think that's important to realize that, yeah, you do have, challenges sometimes that you might not be able to conquer 100%, but there's ways to intervene, I guess you could say. Knowing that warm-ups and cool-downs are crucial. Don't skip them. They're important. Again, we talked about pace management. Strength training as well and cross-training kind of help to keep me strong without really overloading my lungs. So I would take a break from zone 2 training or my long run. Do you know what I mean? I would take breaks, especially if I felt something coming on. And always making sure that I had my inhaler on me regardless of how I might be feeling, whether I was feeling, conceited or not, that I was capable of running 2 marathons back to back. It doesn't matter. I would try to make sure that I always have my inhaler with me. And you mentioned Asthma Canada. So that was funny. So I was dealing with shin splints and I still had a little bit of weight on me dealing with shin splints, and Asthma Canada reached out and they said, hey, we want to do this campaign. Would you be interested in running the TCS Waterfront Marathon in Toronto? This is 2023, representing Team Asthma Canada. So you would be the captain of Team Asthma Canada, and with it will come media opportunities. Well, although I didn't feel like I would be ready, I mean, realistically, 2 months from, maybe not couch to marathon type thing, but certainly not running more than 20 kilometers a week at that point. It was scary, but the opportunity was just too good to pass up.
You mentioned like a few different adjustments. Is there other things? Like I was actually curious if you've considered like when you might like what race you might choose based on location or like time of year based on your asthma.
Yeah, so 100%, right? I probably wouldn't run TCS Waterfront Marathon if I was having a hard time breathing. I probably wouldn't run anything, to be honest, but you look at marathons like Georgina, for example, and you and I have a mutual that just qualified for Boston by running Georgina. It's a very flat course and it's well placed in the year. So timing is everything as well. A lot of people's lungs will really bother them in the colder months. So October, when you do have the TCS Waterfront Marathon, it might not be ideal for others. But if I'm not mistaken, Georgina's first weekend of May. So a little bit easier, maybe not too warm at that point. So again, heat is going to cause your heart rate to go up more, could exacerbate your asthma. But the same could be said about the cold. So finding a marathon, finding a race, whatever distance it's going to be during the time in the season where you find you have the best luck with your lungs, I think is your best bet.
Yeah. Okay. And I guess that would be very like person specific.
100%. Everyone's lungs are different.
What advice would you give to someone who has asthma that wants to start running?
Start small, even if it's just walking or jogging for a minute at a time. That's progress. And realizing that's progress is huge. Only you know your own body. So if you can do a little bit more than what you're doing today, tomorrow, that's perfect. Be patient with yourself. Use your inhaler as prescribed. That's extremely important as well, because you're not there to make your asthma worse. You're there to make it better. And important as well to not compare your journey to anyone else's. So don't compare your journey to mine, because we all have different conditions.
Yeah. I think, like, I know the question wasn't for me, but one other thing I might add is don't be afraid to walk. I know you talked about walking of even just beginning that, but I think a lot of people will have a really hard time, like, or be hard on themselves if they walk at all during a race. I'm a slow runner, right? My marathon was done in 6.5 hours, but my distance is the same distance as everybody else's. Yeah. But don't be afraid to walk. That still makes you a marathoner, a 5K or a 10K or a half marathoner. Walking is okay. And I think that might be something that might be helpful for somebody that does have asthma. If they're having a moment where they need to slow down, it's okay to walk. There's a lot of people that do tons of marathons and do run, walk intervals. Yeah. It's crazy.
It's a strategy for sure, especially during ultra marathons, right? Having asthma or not, it's an actual strategy. And important to note that not just the marathon, but in training as well. So if you're following, you're trying to stick in that zone 2, for example. I'm going to talk about this a lot because I'm a huge advocate of zone 2. I try to keep between 120 to 150 heart rate, we'll say. If I go to 155 heart rate, Now, I used to be scared to just stop and walk a little bit because, oh, my time's going to slow down on my watch. But who cares? Honestly, I started pausing it. If I had to stop to walk a little bit, I would pause it and I would walk for a minute, let my heart rate come down, and then I would run again. It doesn't matter. I'm still out there doing it. And if I'm still staying in that zone, even if I'm walking, I'm still benefiting from it.
Yeah, absolutely. Is there anything that you'd talk about regarding like breathing techniques for training methods? I mean, I think you talked a lot about zone 2, but anything else that you want to add?
Yeah, so diaphragmatic breathing, that's one of the techniques that I would recommend. If you don't know what it is, look it up. But basically, in a nutshell, it is breathing through your abdomen as opposed to breathing through your chest. Now, another thing would be nasal breathing. Admittedly, I get a little claustrophobic when I do it. I've always been a mouth breather, but it helps strengthen the lungs and improves oxygen efficiency as well.
No, those are great breathing techniques. I'm not an asthmatic, but I found that I would often talk to myself during my runs and say, slow down, take a nice deep breath, like recenter yourself. And that would also just help bring down my heart rate as well, right? Because sometimes you do kind of get a little bit out of mind when you're running and you kind of forget what you're doing. So yeah, no, those are all awesome techniques. And I'm hearing it and going, I'm not asthmatic, but I'm putting some of that into practice. So, okay. So what inspired you? We're here on the podcast. I think you said this is the 10th episode. What inspired you to start the Beyond the Wheeze?
Yeah, for me, the answer is actually quite simple. So I wanted to create something that went beyond my personal story. So I do speeches. I go around Ontario and I speak at various conferences and events, workshops, what have you, about my story. I give doctors really the patient perspective, and I think that's very important. Now, I wanted a platform where people with asthma, athletes, and healthcare experts really could come together and have those conversations. I've always felt there's a gap existing there, and we can talk more about, why I feel that, what my childhood looked like, but there were a lot of gaps growing up in healthcare, and I feel like I could have lived a hell of a lot better upbringing had I had a certified respiratory educator, for one, and that's just one thing. So again, closing those gaps where I can, or at least bringing the proper people in one spot to have that conversation, I think is really important. Yeah, so Beyond the Wheeze, it's about showing that asthma doesn't define us, and not just asthma, but respiratory issues in general, they don't define us. And that's the message really that I wish I had growing up.
Yeah. And I, as a healthcare provider, I definitely still see those gaps. And I hope that there are, more people like you that can really help educate people about how to kind of navigate our healthcare system, because it is still quite difficult. Yeah. So you've had some interesting guests and moments, and I'd like to know, what has been the most memorable for you so far?
So far, every guest has really brought something special. I haven't had just, people with asthma. I've had experts. I've had CEOs of non-for-profits like Asthma Canada. I had Jeff Beach on here for episode 3. I had Scott Bailey for episode 2, and that was about COPD. And then one of my last episodes, I had innovators working in the asthma care space, which is terrific. Now, I will say they offer their own piece really of individuality. Mind you, I had Maggie McNeil on recently. And for those of you who don't know who Maggie McNeil is a Olympic gold medalist, silver medalist, bronze medalist, a world champion. She has records everywhere. She's a swimmer, and she's young, and she has asthma. So that, for me, having this platform here, and then having someone like that come on, especially after only 6 episodes, that I think so far has been the most memorable for me, is because I feel like having those voices on, those people with followers, I guess on social media, you could say, having those people on could push that word even a little bit further. So I think, I wouldn't say that I have a memorable moment as opposed to I have a memorable guest. So Maggie McNeil for sure. Now her question, so I ask again a question at the end of each episode, and then that is, what would you do with your last breath if you had the power to influence the world, essentially? And her answer was my favorite. Her answer was, take care of your body, because you really only have one of them. It really hit home for me. It doesn't matter if you have asthma or not. you only have one body, so take care of it.
Yeah. And having seen people at their worst and most vulnerable moments in their lives, being an ICU nurse, I can attest to that, right? And sometimes it comes at you without warning. So yes, it's extremely important to take care of the body that you have. So I imagine that doing all of this and working and having children and a family, it must be very hard. How do you balance all of these things? Being a host, an advocate, marathon runner, family person, a real day job, I think you said.
Yeah, and a day job as well. And it can be quite demanding at times, especially when we go through a wave of layoffs, what we saw here in Sudbury recently in the mines.
Yeah.
And I work in geology, so I'm a geological technician, or geoscience coordinator, I guess technically is what my title is. And yeah, it's demanding. I do love my job, but again, it is really taxing. And then, to add on to that, I have my twins and they're just over the age of 2, and then this podcast and then the speaking engagements. It's absolutely a lot. But I think what's important to know is that if you're passionate about something, and really, and this is so cliche to say, you never really work a day in your life if you love your job. And although this isn't my full-time job, I love it. I absolutely love it because I know that I'm making a difference. And I'm weird. I upload my podcasts onto a platform called Buzzsprout. And from that, Buzzsprout kind of sends it to Apple Podcasts, Spotify, whatnot. I find I will keep a tab up of Buzzsprout and I will keep refreshing it to see how many podcast downloads I get. And what really excites me about that is I feel like I'm reaching one more person. So again, that's what really keeps me going, is being passionate about something. And of course, making time to run really keeps me grounded as well.
Yeah. If you're passionate about anything, really, the hobby or your career or your family, it makes it easy to do those things, right? It doesn't feel like it's work.
No, not at all. And if you don't have something you're passionate about, if you've been looking for that thing, go for a run. Try it out. I
agree. 100%. When people talk to me about running, I'm like, yes, let's talk.
It's funny, right? Because I've had people ask me, is the runner's high real? And I don't think it's necessarily what they think it is. It's 100% real, but it's not like I'm feeling, high. It's that I'm feeling, I don't know. I guess I could say that I'm feeling intensively engaged to something. And that's what running is to me. It's just, getting in UPR, there's no better feeling than that. Doing it while you're within a certain zone of your heart rate, there's no better feeling than that. Running a race and getting that medal around your neck, there's no better feeling than that. I could go on all day about it. But yeah, if you're sitting here listening to the podcast and you don't have anything that you're truly passionate about, may I suggest going out for a run?
I agree with that statement. I would say even for me, training, when I finish a training run and I still feel like I could have given, I'm like, yes, that means the training is working, because I'm not going to go any further because I'm not going to push myself, but I know that I'm like feeling stronger. So like when I run the next day or in 2 days from now, I'm like, yes, let's do this.
There's a problem when, it's Sunday or Monday in my case, and it's a rest day and you're upset.
And that is actually something I would advocate a lot for anybody who is starting, is that, because I have some friends that are running too. I have lots of friends that run there, but some people don't really understand that rest days are just as important, right? Like your zone 2 training, people don't get that.
Nope. 100%. Rest days are important, because if your body's not functioning properly, well, I always say with runs, it's quality over quantity. You're not going to get anything out of it if it doesn't feel right, or if your body doesn't feel good. You're not going to get anything. Take a rest day. It's important. Take 2 rest days even. There's even athletes out there that will take a scheduled week off during their training block, because it's that beneficial. It's your body kind of restart, and really never a bad thing.
Yeah, I've given up on training runs. If I'm like, I get out there 3K in and I'm like, no, this is not happening today. I just turn around and walk back home. So you mentioned earlier a little bit about, I guess, battling depression and talking about depressive thoughts. How has running helped with your mental health?
Yeah, so running really has given me an outlet. Now, I'm not the kind of person to shy away from therapy. I do therapy as well. I think that's really important. But next to therapy, running really does give me that outlet. On the worst days, when I feel stuck in my own head, it reminds me that I'm capable, that I can push through. Now, the movement, the fresh air, And really the sense of accomplishment is huge. And if you want to know how to turn around a bad day, get yourself a PR, go for something big. And honestly, I've gone for runs when I'm just like, you know what, I need to get the hell out of here for a little bit. I'm going to go for a run. And it turns out to be my best run. And then I feel absolutely terrific after that. Yeah, it's an outlet for me, and it's really an outlet for anybody that does it. That's why it's addictive.
Yes. Yeah. Do you find it hard on like those tougher days when you're having maybe more depressive thoughts or symptoms to stay motivated?
You don't, I mean, when you're depressed, when I'm depressed, when I'm really bad, when I'm really anxious, I'm in fight or flight mode. My body naturally just wants to fight. I just want to nail it on the head. Do you know what I mean? But I force myself, just like I've forced myself to get out of a bad mood, to shock my system. I've cold plunged, and something like that really helps me. Now I don't always feel like jumping into a tub of ice. So going for a run is that next best thing. And absolutely, even though you might not want to do it, I don't think I've ever had a run where I've gone on to kind of snap me out of that, I guess, depressive mindset, and it hasn't worked.
Yeah. Especially like to start your day, right? If you're just really not feeling it in the morning, it's really important to put your workout gear out in the morning and be ready so that when you get up and you're not motivated, just get out. I know if I get up at 6 a.m. and I don't want to get out running it, at least I'm looking at my gear and I'm like, okay, it's staring at me. I need to go.
That's a really good idea, actually. I got to start doing that myself, because there's nothing worse than getting out of bed to go for a run. You don't feel great for the first few feet, but you feel terrific, especially when you're done it and you're like, it's 6:30 in the morning and I'm done my run for the day. It's perfect.
Yeah. And it makes me feel better if you have to sit at a computer all day. I find if you're somebody that has a little bit of a more sedentary type work, that it makes you feel at least, okay, well, at least I did something early this morning and I'm not getting 100 steps between my home office and my kitchen.
Exactly. So, and then you have something to brag about to the person next to you that says they slept in.
Yeah. What'd you do?
What did you do?
What mindset shifts have you used to help like really push past those limitations?
Yeah. So I stopped seeing asthma as a barrier, and I started viewing it really as a challenge to overcome. But once I realized really that progress was possible, and again, so that's what was hard about starting. Once I realized that progress was possible, even if it was slow, everything changed. So realizing that asthma isn't a limitation, and again, it's just another obstacle to overcome. We do have conditions that are obvious barriers, but there's always something that you can do to push through them.
No, that's really awesome, because I find that the mindset can really affect how you yourself, how you view what outcomes you've achieved, and then you compare yourself also to others too, right? So pushing past those limitations. So, obviously you do a lot of advocacy work. You've talked about healthcare. You've talked about your childhood and some of the gaps that you've encountered. What are some of the key issues that you've seen in asthma care that you feel need more attention?
So early diagnosis is huge. I didn't have a hard time getting diagnosed because my asthma was very severe as a kid. But I see that a lot here, and I see that a lot at the webinars that I take part in or the workshops that I go to. That early diagnosis is a huge issue, especially here in Ontario. Better education on asthma management, that's huge, and faster access to specialists, especially where we're located. I mean, just geographically, if we want to go see a specialist, we're going to Barrie. And, that's a 6-month wait, and that's a 4.5-hour drive. That's not easy. Yeah. Now, my number one gap that I see in healthcare, and it's because I have direct experience with it, is a lack of CREs, certified respiratory educators in the emergency room. And I sound like a broken record bringing it up because I just brought it up. I brought it up in like 2 episodes, but it's my most recent experience with it. And I went to the hospital. Now, this is about 2 months ago, but I actually did it the other day as well because I'm dealing with a chest infection currently. And I'm 34 years old. I know what my lungs are. I know how they are. I know what they are capable of, but I also know when I'm having a bad flare-up. And for me, a bad flare-up is me going through an inhaler a day, taking nebulizers left, right, and center just to try to control my asthma. And when I go in the hospital, I need to be there because I've always fought the hospital as a kid. I don't want to go there if I don't need to. Now, showing up at the hospital room at 34 years old, saying I can't breathe, for them to tell me your stats say your oxygen saturation is 96, 97%, go sit down, it's an 8-hour wait. That's bad.
Yeah.
Yes, my stats look fine. To you, they might look good. And even if you want to listen to my breathing with your stethoscope, you might not hear a wheeze, but I don't present with wheeze. I have a very tight chest when I'm having a flare up. And the difference is, well, I mean, think of your lungs really being capable of the capacity that they are, and then turn that into a quarter of what they're capable of doing. And that's how I'm presenting myself to the hospital room. For me to sit there for 8 hours when I'm having a bad attack, it's probably not going to go well. So for me, the biggest one is having a CRE in every single hospital. We're all individual. And to expect every doctor in an emergency room to know chronic conditions such as asthma and the ins and the outs of it really is just, it's not very likely to ever really happen. So having that CRE there, that again, certified respiratory educator, to bridge that gap between the patient and the physician, I think is huge, and it could save a lot of lives. And it's, almost put me in the ground before as well, because I didn't have that piece there. Fortunately, as a kid growing up, I had a mom, and my mom had asthma as well. So she was able to be that bridge between the patient and the doctor. But if she wasn't there, well, 12-year-old me, I'm probably not going to be able to advocate for myself. It can never be good. So having them there, I think, is huge. We see 300 deaths annually in Canada due to asthma. And I think just that one little piece, that one little thing, I think could save a lot of lives.
I think you mentioned this with the CRE, but is how do you feel the healthcare system could better help support people with asthma?
So early diagnosis, better education, asthma management, what have you. But spirometry testing really is that instrument that allows doctors to diagnose these asthma. So ensuring that asthma patients or prospective asthma patients have access to that spirometry test so they can properly get diagnosed and treated as early as possible is huge. Better patient education and a shift from prescribing medication to actually teaching people how to live well with asthma. Because again, growing up, well, I was coming out of the hospital, say a week, 2 weeks in the hospital every time, coming out just to go back home, where I was essentially in a cesspool of triggers, and it would just go right back into my lungs. And then that hospital room became a revolving door for me, and I would be right back in just to again get better, to go back home and then get bad again. So having that educational piece there really could be more beneficial than prescribing medication, and it could really save a lot of money and save a lot of valuable healthcare resources, especially in a time like now when it seems like it's always busy, extremely busy when we go to any hospital.
What role do you find that fitness and lifestyle have played in asthma management, and I guess either for yourself or in general?
Yeah, it's huge. Regular exercise, proper nutrition, avoiding triggers can make a huge difference. So in recent months, I've gained a little bit of weight, and just having gained that little bit of weight and taken a little bit of a step back from running due to an injury originally, I noticed a huge change in my lifestyle for the worse. It's certainly not for the better. It's about building a lifestyle that supports lung health and being consistent with that. Yeah.
No, that's really good to talk about in terms of it's not just something that's quick and a quick turnover, right? Like something you got to maintain. I feel like that's what I'm trying to say. Is that if you can maintain some type of physical activity, it doesn't need to be running. So I hear a lot of people say, I'm not running, Joelle, stop telling me to run. Right. I'm like, hey, whatever. But it doesn't need to be running. It just needs to be activity of some sort. I
always get that. I'll literally have people roll down their windows when I'm running and ask me if I want to ride, or they'll make that joke that I'm sure you've heard before. What are you running from? You know what I mean? No, it certainly doesn't have to be running. And it doesn't even necessarily need to be, physical. I mean, even just switching your eating habits could be huge.
Yeah. I actually got asked that, the running thing, the getting picked up or whatever, because I live on a lake and they plow a nice winter road, usually for us. Okay. And we have a lot of like ice huts and stuff. And usually I take advantage of it because I usually plow a good 2 to 3 kilometers so I could get a good run on it. And it's fun. And because it's nice and flat too. I had a guy in a snowmobile come past me. And then he turned around and came back. And he's like, I just want to make sure that you're actually like working out and not like you need a ride somewhere. Yeah. I'm actually running. And he's like, okay, because I guess he thought I was like running from something. And I was like, no, like there's nothing chasing me. But I'm like, oh, I said, well, that's fun. All right. So we have a few kind of rapid fire questions, some fun things. I'm also very excited to hear your answers. What is your go-to pre-race meal?
Without a doubt, Uncrustable. Easy, take them out of the freezer, wait 30 minutes, and you're eating a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. Easy.
Hey, that I got into those last year. I wasn't using them for running and I needed to stop eating them. But yeah. For running, yes. Oh my God, okay, that's awesome. Yeah, I didn't actually think about that.
I don't recommend getting the Nutella ones. They're delicious, but maybe not a good pre-run snack.
No. Favorite running playlist or like a pump up song get you hyped up?
So I'm not much of a music listener on my runs. I usually listen to podcasts, but
wow.
Yeah, if I know, which is weird, right? But it's going to sound even weirder. I listen to like super slow music. I'll even listen to some instrumentals with piano or an orchestra. It doesn't really matter to me. The way I see it, if I can listen to something that is just super calm, I can help keep my body really calm as well. I've never been one to put on some high raging music of any sort. I like to keep it calm and simple.
Wow, I was not expecting that. Okay,
yeah.
That's great. Okay, dream race you'd love to run one day.
Yeah, I think the same answer as everyone, really. Boston.
Yeah.
My goal is to eventually qualify for Boston. We were speaking, I think, before we hit record, but for me to qualify for Boston at my age, I think it's a 3-hour, 5-minute run, which is insane. I'm still a long ways away from that, but yeah, Boston.
That's okay. The time gets longer as you age. So
yeah,
if you qualify as an 80-year-old, you'll be great.
Can't wait to get older.
See, that's a good thing about aging. Okay, if you could give one message to your younger self, what would it be?
Don't let fear define your limits. You're stronger than you think.
Yeah, that's awesome. I love that. Okay, so I know you use this question, and we're going to now flip the switch onto you, and I'm going to say it to you. So one final question. Whether you have asthma or not, every breath we take is a gift. It's a reminder of our resilience, our drive to keep going, our power to define our own limits. With a single breath, you have the potential to move mountains and change the world. So with that in mind, I have one final question for you. If you had only one last breath, but with it the power to influence the world, what would your message be?
With my last breath, I would tell the world that limits are meant to be challenged, whether it's asthma, adversity, or doubts in your own mind. Don't let them define you. Every breath that you take, whether you have asthma or not, it's a chance to push forward, to inspire people, to really make an impact. So take that breath, stand tall, and keep moving, because the only true limits are the ones that you refuse to challenge yourself.
That is an amazing message. Thank you so much for letting me do this. This has been super fun, and I'll let you close it off.
No, thank you so much for doing this. This is awesome. I thought, for episode 10, let's switch things up a little bit with a bit of a bonus episode. Let's stray away from the norm. And, I did think about just having an episode where I'm talking about my story and I'm going through a few things, but I think this is going to hold more value to the listeners. So again, Joelle, thank you so much for flipping the script and putting me in the hot seat today. This was an incredible conversation, and I hope our listeners understand a little bit more about my journey, why I do what I do, and why I believe movement is so important, no matter where your starting point. If this episode resonated with you, don't forget to subscribe, leave a review, and share it with somebody who needs a little inspiration. And as always, you can find more content, resources, and ways to connect with me at wespeak.ca. Thank you again, and have a terrific rest of your day.
Thank you for listening to Beyond the Wheeze. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to subscribe and share. Follow us on Instagram at Beyond the Wheeze and or follow me at the Asthma Runner for more updates. Keep breathing strong and remember, your potential has no limits. Until next time.